All right, our social workers. There was some questions about how and why we couldn't fill the vacancies within our social worker program. Well, let me just kind of set the stages where we're at. Right now, we have 19 FTEs, full-time employees within our social worker program. We have one director, that is Jessica Waters. We have 3 managers. We have 5 case managers and 1 therapist. So there's different levels of social workers. So we actually have 5 vacant therapist positions, and we have 2 vacant case manager positions. So that's where we come up with the 19 FTEs, full-time employees. Right now, our social workers are covering Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. in the morning till 9 p.m. In about 2 months, we plan on hiring another social worker and adjusting some of the schedules so that we can cover Saturday and Sunday. Same hours, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., so 12 hours a day. That'll be really nice. And then as we build it out, we'd love to go to 24/7 because, I mean, a lot of people in crisis need help, late into the evening, early morning as well. So, but one of the big issues is there's a national shortage for social workers. And I mean, not only across this country, it's here in Salt Lake City as well. There's just not enough social workers to go around. Pay is an issue. And so in September of 2021, our therapists, our licensed clinicians, received a pay raise, but the case managers did not. So we're working on that as well. One of the things that when you look at the program we have here at Salt Lake City is the co-responder model. We pioneered that 4 or 5 years ago. We've been kind of leading the country in some of this work that we're doing. So there's not a lot of jobs to compare it to. When you look at jobs and pay within a city, you compare it to other operations and organizations. So we don't have a lot of comparables. So we're trying to raise that as well, because the work they're doing is critical to the work that we're doing in our community. So we'll keep working on that. The other big issue is the social workers that are graduating and coming out of college are going into the private sector. There's a lot of money to be made in the private sector. And so that's a lot of them are going there. A lot of them are going to the hospitals and to the VA. Right now, I was talking to Jessica Waters, and she told me the University of Utah Hospital has 50 vacancies for social workers. So there are a lot of opportunities for social workers to go and work and make good money as they deserve. So we're, like I say, shortage of social workers. We need to increase the pay, and we'll be much more competitive. So that's kind of where we're going with our social workers and what we're trying to do. Any questions right now? Before we.
Chief, I know that supporting that co-response model was one of the recommendations from this commission. So I feel like I can speak on behalf of our group that we're in support of that. Is there something that we can do to help support that pay raise? Was it for your case managers? Yeah, for your case managers. Is there some energy we can try to put behind that?
Commissioner, that's great. That's a great question and statement. When we get ready, we'll probably bring that item before you. And it's always nice to run that by this group for your support. And then once we have that support, we can take that forward to the administration and to the council, because it really does carry weight when we talk about that we've come before the commission and you support it. So as soon as we land on a number that we think is good and within the range and will be competitive, we'll certainly circle back to this group. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next slide, Moana. Okay. The next thing is, and this is a great question. I don't remember which commissioner asked it, but is there a possibility of working with an intern program with the University of Utah? There is. In fact, we actually are. Right now, we have one intern, and they serve a 3-month full-time internship here at Salt Lake City. They jump right into the co-response model. They go out and it's part of their curriculum and part of their internship to follow through and go through this. So we have one that's been going. They have 1 more month to go. We have, I think there's another a meeting set up to see if we can develop a full-time cadre of interns to come in. And I asked Jessica, if in a perfect world, how many interns could you handle at one time? And she said anywhere from 4 to 5. So if we could really push that program, and I think we will, imagine the value that these internships would bring to our program. And then the exposure to what we're doing as a co-responder model, it may be exactly where they want to go when they come out of school. So it could be a very strong recruiting tool as well. The other part of that is we have been, Yvette, myself, and Jessica have been talking with the dean, dean of social work up at the U. And Jessica is trying to develop a curriculum for the 23 or 24 year program up there, where we actually have a class to talk about street outreach, policing, mental health crisis within law enforcement, because right now there's not a lot of exposure to that. And that has really resonated with the dean and Jessica. So it'd be really nice to be able to teach that. And again, that would, I think, bring more people into the internship and actually bring more people into the social work that we're doing here in Salt Lake City through the co-responder model. So that is a fantastic thing and a great suggestion from this group as well. So thank you. Any questions on that? Okay. All right. Remember the survey follow-up question in the recommendations from the rep commissions? There was a recommendation for a survey, an internal implicit bias survey. And I remember when Commissioner Prosperos was talking about it, there was talk about us developing it and doing it here internally, but it was kind of met with, hey, listen, this should be developed by a third party. It should be implemented, developed, and processed by a third party, and then interpreted. So we agree, and we're all on board with that. So, but this is something that I think commissioners or Moana, somebody needs to start reaching out to an agency, a university, or somebody, a Pew type survey that can help us do that. I mean, and we're all on board, but I don't know how we proceed, commissioners. How would you like to do that? Any thoughts?
I wonder, Chief, because I agree with you about the independent nature of it for legitimacy and to develop that trust. I wonder, Moana, if I could delegate back to our chair and co-chair to engage with the appropriate city officials to start that process, because I imagine there'll be a price tag that comes with that, and I'm not sure how the finances will work with that, but maybe we could empower our commission leadership to initiate that process cooperatively with the city.
Yeah, and I can follow up with both of them, and then we can get the ball rolling on that. Also, there are funds that we can look into so that it doesn't come out of the chief's budget, but it comes out of the recommendation, since it's a direct recommendation from the REP.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine if it comes out of the chief's budget. I'm just kidding, Chief. Yeah, I know there's funds set aside for that, and there's probably a number of rules on the process for the city, depending on amount. So let's make sure that we're doing it appropriately. But I think that's a great point, Chief. Let's put that ball back in the commission's court and then work with the city to get that going.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Like I say, we're completely 100% behind it. We'll help facilitate it, but I don't think we shouldn't really have our hands on that. That should be completely independent of us. So.
And Commissioner McDonald, I see you've unmuted. Do you have a comment?
Yes, I believe that was brought up when we were first discussing this, on how to move forward with that, if I'm not mistaken.
So it may be reflected in our minutes somewhere on to help us with process.
Yes, because I remember it was a pretty lengthy discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure if you circle back to the chair, you might be able to remember, but I do remember that being a very lengthy discussion. We did have some recommendations about that.
And I'll go look back at from last summer, what those were specifically. Okay. Also ask Coletta. Oh, Commissioner.
I just want to add that I would recommend this fall under our policy and practice or training subcommittee to lead this so that they can do this while they meet as a subcommittee and report back.
Okay.
Commissioners, you're absolutely right. We did a lot of work and a lot of discussion. If you look at your phase 1 report on page 23 and 24, it talks about this survey and who it would be shared with, and there's actually references to Pew surveys and examples and templates in there. So we did a lot of work. So I think we just need to pull that up and just push forward with it.
Yeah, and that'll be good because, since the chief will be talking about, there are some things that you've already checked off. So I guess it's just naturally going to the next theme.
Okay. Next, any further questions or comments on that? All right, Moana, next slide, please.
Mhm.
Well, this is again, another one of the recommendations of the rep, and this is something that Lieutenant Zayas has been working on very hard as of late. This is the diversity and inclusion training that was talked about. We have reached out, I think, to 6 organizations who are interested. We've heard back from 5. And these would be the organizations that would want to come in and do this internal training for our department. Yvette's in communication with them and working with them to schedule a time when they could come in and present. The application deadline is May 27th of this year. So there's a few more weeks for anybody that would like to put in, or a group. Once we do that, each organization can come in and give us a 30-minute presentation. We're kind of leaving it open to see what they want to present on. So we kind of get a flavor for, what's important to them or what they feel is important for us. Again, there's 2 rep commissioners, and we don't have to be limited to 2 if anybody else would like to join, but we'd love to have you at the table with us as we hear these presentations, and then we'll narrow it down to maybe 1 or 2 that would, or probably 1 that would do the job for us. Yvette, anything else you want to comment on that?
No, I mean, this is a tall order to come in and present. And so with talking with the different groups, it will probably be a collaborative effort, and it's going to take time for, once the group or groups are selected, to develop a solid program and making sure that everything meshes and runs smoothly, being that we're a 700+ department, making sure that they can provide this type of training regularly to our organization. So everybody was very positive, very excited to participate in this and to see where it can grow. Excitement is the most common theme when I've talked to all these consultants, and it's very positive, and we're on the forefront of what we're providing. So thank you for pushing us in this direction.
And then Commission, Yvette and myself, we attended a conference, it's been several months ago, and we heard a presentation from, then at the time it was Sacramento Chief Daniel Hahn, and his presentation was a way forward, historical bias, and how we got here. And it was really centered on policing, and it talked about where it started and kind of where we got to today. It was probably one of the best presentations I've ever seen or heard. I just talked with Daniel a few weeks ago and asked about it. And this is just a PowerPoint of his presentation, and I couldn't do it justice, but I would love to see if he couldn't maybe come in and share that with us or with the group, because in some way, somehow, I'd love to incorporate that into the training that we give, because it's coming from a police chief talking about law enforcement, and it's a different perspective, but it really drives the point home of how there has been bias injected into policing for many, many years. So is that something you'd like to see or hear more about, Commission?
I would really be interested in hearing that.
Yes, and yes.
I don't know, what did you think about that presentation?
It was amazing. It really opened my eyes, and it was exactly what I had been envisioning for some time now with the leadership courses that I've attended and what we can provide. And it's nice because when you're talking to police officers, having a police officer be part of that presentation helps create that buy-in, and not something that you're just checking the box with. It's actually something that he has lived and experienced because he incorporated his own personal life into it with his father and what he experienced. So it was just very touching. And it just, I think we can do that here in Salt Lake City because we do have a lot of diversity here within our department, and in getting those officers to come out of the shell and talk about their experiences, not only in law enforcement, but outside of law enforcement, and what they've experienced and how it's helped them to be a better police officer serving our community.
Yeah, it was, like I say, it was one of the best presentations I've ever heard on this topic. And he really actually referenced some of the concerns in his presentation. We didn't even know it was coming, but he talks about Salt Lake City and some issues here. And it was just like, wow. So anyway, I'd love to continue that conversation if you guys would like to hear that.
Moana, do you know, does that require a vote, or can we just make it an agenda item? Is there?
I think we can make it an agenda item, and I meet with the chair and vice chair, and we can schedule that in for work with Lieutenant Zayas and the chief on when to schedule them in.
Yeah, I heard a couple commissioners say they're in favor of it. I'm absolutely in favor of it. I think it'd be a great perspective.
Okay, Lieutenant Zayas, I can work with you to get that on.
Sounds good, Moana.
Okay, next slide, Moana. The next one is on the school resource officers. And I'm sorry the chair's not here because I know this is near and dear to her heart, but we continue to meet with the Senior Advisor for Education, Jennifer Newell. She's wonderful to work with and for. We've now had two-hour meetings, and we've gone through the MOU with a fine-tooth comb and talked about issues that we have, concerns that we have. She's going to do the very same with the district. And then if there's any sticking points between the two, we'll come together and talk about how we make this whole thing work. So it's been a good process. And I want you to know that as we do this, we have done it with the focus that this is for the students and for the safety of the students, and for not law enforcement or policing the schools, but keeping the schools safe, a safe place for them to learn and to socialize. So it's been a great process. We'll continue with it. That may be something you want to bring Jennifer back to report on as well, because she's been very driven, and we've done a lot of work. So I think it would be good to hear some of that hard work that we've done. Any questions on that?
Moana, can I ask you to coordinate with Jennifer on when she would think would be a good time to give us an update? Because I think this commission would be very interested in that.
Yes, and the School Safety Commission subcommittee, we're just going to always have Jennifer in it and use that as a working group, a work session. So as she meets with the chief and the SROs, they can give continual feedback with Nicole or the chair and the rest of the subcommittee.
Yeah, that's a great approach. I forgot about that. And the chair of this commission is also the chair of that subcommittee, right? Yeah, so they'll have a good determination. It's a great suggestion, Chief. Thank you.
Next slide, Moana. Something internal we're doing. It's kind of we've taken a little bit of a different direction on some of our problem solving within our downtown business districts. Is this business community engagement officer. This is a new position within the police department. This person or this officer will be the point of contact for businesses that are experiencing livability and operational concerns. Commissioner Angela Warden, sometimes when you're dealing with businesses, they call and they'll call, they have a problem or an issue, they'll get the next officer the response. This will be their point of contact, so they don't just keep getting the next officer. Not that that's a bad thing, but this will be the quarterback that brings all the tools and all the disciplines to help solve the problem rather than continue to respond over and over and over. So we're excited for this position. It was modeled after a program in Long Beach that has had great success. We want to start it in the downtown businesses, but eventually we'll move it out so there'll be 3 within the city to cover different areas within the city. I think it'll really pay dividends in the community. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. We've selected the officer, and that officer will be starting, I believe, the 1st of May. So if there's any questions, or if you want to hear more about that, we can always bring that to your meetings as well. Any questions? Okay. And then the next slide is an update on community outreach and recruitment. Have you guys met Director Brent Weisberg yet?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Yeah, you're on mute, Luana.
he's our new.
Yeah, he hasn't come to the meeting since I've been here.
But this will be a position within his unit. And again, it's community outreach, and it's coordinating different fairs, different street outreach, educational venues, things like that. It's to enhance our recruitment. This is something that the Rep Commission recommended, and we brought it to you. You gave us the thumbs up. We appreciate it. I think it's really going to pay dividends as we try to move forward and to recruit those officers that we want here in Salt Lake City. I remember Commissioner Davis basically said, Chief, make sure we get the officers that we want here in Salt Lake City. This is the program and the person that will make sure that happens, commissioners. We're registered for the Pride Festival in June. That's a 2-day event, Saturday and Sunday. We have a lot of officers that are excited to be there. There's a lot of interaction and recruitment that we do there. The community outreach for this summer, the calendar is full. I'm telling you, we're going to put a lot of effort into recruitment, especially within our community. Let me see, I had a couple things. We have Brent sent me some notes here. He says we have a recent we've registered for 2 in-person recruitments. One is tomorrow. We've increased our social media recruitment efforts, so you should see a lot more recruitment and advertisement on social media. We're working with finance to put more money to purchase advertising online, on air, over the radio, and in print. We're going to be submitting a proposal so that we can put some stickers on our cars that basically say, we're hiring, join our team, and that has a QR code. We don't want to waste any good advertising opportunities. And then, like I say, this community outreach officer will start in the 1st of May. And I want to thank you for your recommendation on that. I think it'll really pay dividends for our department. Any questions? And then as we recruit more, we're going to start more academies. We're going to have a class start in September. We had one in January. We had one in May. We have one in September. We're going to try to have another in November. So we're working hard to recruit the right officers to be, here at Salt Lake City. But in doing so, we're going to have more academies. So our training unit is ramped up. We're doing more in the academies, and we'll be turning out more officers. A couple of notes there, that the lateral officers are now being offered $5,000 hiring bonus. That seems like a lot, but in some of the meetings in speaking with other chiefs at other cities, some agencies are offering up to $20,000 and $25,000 for hiring bonuses, which is that's a lot of money. But we're trying very hard here at the department to do a lot. We're looking at not only the money. We got some great raises last year, and I know they're looking at negotiations this year as to where they may be. But this department has a lot of opportunities for officers to go to different assignments here. And then the incentives. We have take-home cars. We're looking at, we would love to get a new training facility. We have a mental health clinician. I know you supported that as well. So we're trying to hit on all cylinders as we recruit the officers that we want to serve here, serve the community of Salt Lake City. So that's kind of a review of outreach and recruitment. Any questions?
I do have a comment, but I cannot see the gallery, so I want to make sure I'm not speaking to people. Moana, can you, anybody else care to share anything? Yeah, I think I really appreciate those outreach efforts, and particularly, Chief, when I hear you talking about bringing the right officers in, and I believe that that is consistent with some of the recommendations from this board about the type of officer we want in our community. And I don't know if Commissioner Davis has his audio or microphone working yet, but he also talked about bringing in the right officers so we have the department that we want, which was the end of that quote, as I recall. And I think between all of our collective efforts to ensure that we have a progressive department, we're bringing in the officers who want to do police work, what I believe is the right way, but in a department that believes in investing in their community. So it's not just this idea of a hotshot job where you run around and drive fast. It's about serving the community. And those are the officers that we're recruiting. And I think it's this circular pattern of creating the department for officers who want to work in that environment to bring them in. And I can just, over the last year and a half, 2 years of this process, I can just really see all of that coming together. So it's pretty neat. So $5,000 is a lot of money in some ways it's not when you compare it. But when you put all those other benefits of coming in to work for this department, I think there's a lot of advantages. So I think collectively we're on the right track.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I am now on Steve, and so thank you for your comments. I appreciate those.
And Moana, during that conversation, we talked about that business officer. I can't remember what your title of that was, Chief, but also the
Business
outreach.
Community Engagement Officer.
Yeah, and then hiring a new recruiting. So there were 3 potential new people that I think would be wonderful if we brought them before this commission when the time is right, when they get their feet underneath them and know what it is. So if we could just capture that. As the acting chair for today, I'm giving you lots of assignments, but I do think it's important to capture those because those would be good conversations.
Well, thank you, commissioners. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Chief.
Do you have anything more for me? I've got another appointment I need to get to, and I think Yvette does too, so we'll log off. But if you need anything from us, please, you can reach out to me directly or through Moana.
Thank you, Chief, for your support and your time and the relationship with this commission. It's pretty neat to see how willing the department is to work with us and to look for those improvements. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We'll see you.
Okay, unless anyone has a comment or a thought, I think we're moving on to agenda item number 6, the Salt Lake City 911 dispatch presentation. And I'm not sure who's representing that group, if it's Director Myers or another representative. Please join in. Thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. This is my first meeting with this group, and I just wanted to start with I'm absolutely honored to be here. I firmly believe in the work of this commission. In the past, 911 hasn't really been an active participant in a lot of these community meetings, and under my leadership, we intend to do so. So as much of a participant as you want us to be, we'll be at every meeting if you'd like us to be. I think our dispatchers are the first responders. And I think it's important for us to also engage in some of these community discussions. So if you want us as a partner, we're more than happy to be here at every meeting. So I just want to throw that out there. So my name is Stephen Meyer. I haven't met most of you. I am the new director of Salt Lake City 911. I was hired on in November. And one of my commitments is to make sure that we, create a diverse, equitable workforce that serves the community in the way that they want to be served. One of the things I heard Chief Brown just talk about was, having the right officers. We're kind of taking the same philosophy with the recruitment of our dispatchers. Our dispatchers are the first contact for people that are in crisis. You know, nobody calls us when they're having a good day, right? You call 911 when you're having a really bad day. And so I really am trying hard to fill the seats that we have, but I'm not willing to fill them with just anybody. We're filling them with the right people that have the qualifications, the knowledge, and the empathy for our community. So we're definitely ramping up our recruiting efforts, but we're not cutting corners in doing so. So I just wanted to put that out there before I get started. So we are going to talk about a little bit about our call diversion programs today, and then some of the commission's recommendations as they were specific to dispatch that were in the phase 1 report, page 26 and 27. So Moana, if you want to start go to the next slide. So our first, and this is our main source of call diversion at the moment, there's several other programs coming online. You know, we're working with Chief Brown and his group and the social workers. Dispatch is meeting at this point monthly with the management team of the social workers to make sure we understand how we can utilize them best. But right now, MCAT is our primary source for people in crisis. So if you're not familiar with MCAT, it stands for the Mobile Crisis Outreach Team. They have both licensed clinicians who are highly trained and peer support specialists who are also certified. And every one of their clinicians and their peer support specialists have some sort of personal experience with either past mental health or substance abuse challenges. I think that connection has really helped our people. You know, it's really easy, like, you know, when you go to a doctor and you see somebody, but you know they haven't experienced what you did. You know, when they know that the people they're talking to are in the same boat, it's really helped build some, you know, really strong relationships with dispatch and them, and that we can trust that who we're passing our calls off to are able to handle them. When they are dispatched, they're dispatched by their own people. They arrive in unmarked vehicles to support privacy. Their main goal is to keep those that they serve in their communities and out of hospitals and detention facilities. I think everyone on this commission, including myself, knows that for a vast majority of these calls, detention facilities and hospitals are not where they belong. They need the help. And that's kind of what this partnership is about, is getting them the help and not the punishment aspect that has been so, you know, long evident in these types of calls. So we work closely with the leadership of MCAT to develop a seamless call flow to make sure that we can meet the needs of our callers and provide mental health options where appropriate as an alternative response to the call for help. We are working on several things right now that I think the commission really probably will enjoy. One of them is we're going to later this year, hopefully, pilot a program where they will have a clinician actually come into dispatch and help our dispatchers with some of these calls. So what this would look like, you know, we're still in the very early, you know, planning process of this right now, but one of my dispatchers answers a call and it's somebody that's suffering from a mental health crisis. That clinician would be able to walk over to the dispatcher and either coach them through, you know, things to say, things to do, or if it's, you know, appropriate, they could take over the call themselves and have a direct interaction with them. So we're working on, you know, just kind of some of the logistics and how that would work and what hours of the day they would be here. But we're hoping to try that out later this summer and see what kind of results we have. You know, MCAT, they've stated that if that was something that was successful, they'd like to see it rolled out on a statewide basis. But I volunteered us to, you know, help test that for them, because to me, mental health is one of the single most important things that need to be focused on at this point. So does anyone in the commission have any questions on this portion?
I do. Do you, I don't mean to be on the spot, and there may be a lot of detail in the answer to this question, but how do you determine what goes to MCAT and what's appropriate for the co-response model or some other law enforcement response? Is there like a screening?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have on my next slide, there's some results that I can show you, but our dispatchers are trained to ask certain questions. So they're asking for things like, you know, violence. Are you trying to hurt yourself right now? Or, you know, do you have weapons on you? Are you thinking of hurting other people? So depending on their answers to their questions, it may still be dispatched as a law enforcement call initially. Our primary goal in dispatch is always safety first, and that's not just for the first responder, but for also the community. I think we all know that somebody with mental health needs, sometimes sending them a police officer is not always the best approach. It often will escalate the situation. So anytime there's a safety concern, police will be dispatched first, but they will only respond until the scene is secure, and then they will call MCAT, have them come out, and then usually, as long as the scene is safe, the officers will back off and maybe sit, in their car on the street, or out of sight, and they may stay around just for protection, but they try to keep themselves separated in most of those situations. Any other questions? Okay, so see, these are some of our results, and when I saw these, I actually had to double check them to make sure that the numbers were accurate, but they're eye-opening. So if you look on your screen there at the totals, since February of 2021, we have taken or diverted 994 calls to MCAT. Now, this does not include calls where PD may have arrived on scene and then requested MCAT respond. These are 994 calls that we were able to transfer out to them without the need for police involvement. Out of those, 458 or 46.1% were resolved over the phone with no further action necessary. So that means, either a peer support specialist or a clinician talked to them over the phone, and they were satisfied with that result, and that's all they had to do. The other 45.3%, I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself here. So 450 calls, or 45.3%, were handled by an MCAT, either clinician or peer support specialist going on scene with the caller. So if you just kind of combine those two, they were able to handle 91% of the calls without any law enforcement. No law enforcement, they were able to handle it, either on the phone or in person, and get our callers the help that they really desperately need and reason they called in the first place. 65 of the 994 calls ended up needing law enforcement when they got there. So, they got there, and there's various reasons why, either in some cases they determined the person was violent, and so they would back off and they would have law enforcement respond and secure the scene, or just whatever. There's multiple reasons that they do it. If you look, the interesting thing that I noticed is February of 21, there were 11 calls where law enforcement was needed, but as you go on through the months, those numbers tend to drop, and to me that says that that's training, right? February of 21 was the first month that they really kind of started this model. And so people really weren't sure what they could do. They were a little bit nervous about going out to these calls. And then you go halfway through and we're at 1, 6, 2, 2, 4, 3, and 5. So that says to me that the training from dispatch and the training for the MCAT professionals significantly increased as they gained experience doing this. So that was only 7% of the calls where law enforcement was actually needed out of the 994. And then 1.4% of them, or 21 calls, were referred to a higher level of care. So these were people that ended up at either a behavioral health hospital or an emergency room after the MCAT specialist checked on them and determined that that's what they needed. So does the commission have any questions on the results or comments?
Steve, I have a question. First
Sure.
of all, I love that name. I like
Thank
you
you.
already. How does the MCAT professional arrive on scene? Like, what is their presentation? Are they in uniform? What does it look like when they arrive on scene?
Moana, can you go back to the prior slide for me for just a second? So Commissioner, that's a good question. So they all arrive in unmarked vehicles. Privacy is their utmost concern. So when they arrive, there's nothing, that's going to show their neighbors or anyone else that, mental health, clinician is there. They show up in plain clothes. They will have a some sort of badge or ID with them just to, verify that they're an authorized person, but yeah, they show up in plain clothes because they don't want to announce to the world what is going on there. And that's one of the reasons why they're trained. They ask for police if needed, but they avoid it, because obviously when people with, lights and sirens show up, the neighbors tend to start asking questions. So for the most part, they avoid those things, and it works really well. And they're able to maintain privacy on almost all of those calls.
That's awesome.
Question,
Thank you.
are you saying that the 994 calls would have been likely police matters if it had not been for MCAT?
Commissioner, that is exactly right. A vast majority of those calls in the past would have been dispatched to police officers first. It probably 99.9% of them would have been dispatched to police officers first if this program was not available. So this is an excellent tool for our community.
Great, great. Thank you.
And Steve, on that chart of those that required a higher level of care, do you know, did that come as a result of it got sent back for law enforcement response, like somebody who had to involuntarily commit or suicidal ideations or something like that? Do you know how it got to that higher level of care?
Generally, the referral to higher level of care comes from MCAT directly. It comes from MCAT directly. So that means initially the MCAT professionals arrive on scene, they evaluate the patient, and they determine that, this person either needs to, go to a behavioral health hospital or to the emergency room. And then they make that referral, and they will call us for, if they need medical transport, they'll call. But usually they actually transport themselves as long as the person is not violent and not in an immediate life-threatening situation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, next slide, please, Moana. The next program we have, not sure how familiar the commission is with this, so I chose to put this in there so I can certainly go into more detail if I need to. But the city is launching a park ranger program here soon. Last week, the leadership of SLC 911 met with program manager Janessa Edwards to talk about what this program is going to look like. Dispatch is committed to providing radio training and dispatch training to all of the new hires now and in the future to ensure that this program is a success. From my interactions with Director or Manager Edwards, we've determined it's going to be a very proactive program. So they're going to be out in our parks, and they're going to be dealing with a lot of the, low level things that we don't really want our officers, dealing with. They're going to be dealing with, littering. They're going to be, trying to get, people experiencing homelessness, the resources that they need. And then if there's bigger issues coming in, they will call it into us so that we can dispatch the appropriate first responders to the scene. So we are committed partners with them, and we are going to make sure that that program is a success to help divert some of those calls. All of their park rangers are going to spend time in dispatch, learning how to ask for help if they need it, communicate effectively over a radio, and then learning what our 911 professionals do daily. So when our dispatchers are asking them a million questions on what we're looking for, they understand why we're asking it, and that they know what information to look for so that we can have a successful collaborative team approach to this. And then over the coming weeks, the leadership from the Park Rangers program and SLC 911 will be meeting several times to develop the program and ensure that we're utilizing this new resource in the best possible way. Any questions on the Park Ranger or dispatchers' involvement in that? Okay, next slide, please. And here are some of the recommendations from the phase 1, and it's on page 26 and 27. One of the recommendations I was asked to speak about is the collaboration with public safety to understand how 911 calls are being taken and directed. Right now, we are meeting regularly with Chief Brown and Chief Lee with the fire department, as well as Chief Bodine with emergency management. We discuss any issues that are related to our departments and how SLC 911 are handling those calls, and we come up with collaborative approaches on how to resolve any issues that we face as a team. So we have a very open dialogue. You know, obviously I've only been in my role for a few months now, but we've had a very good dialogue in that few months. And when these issues come up, we are more than open to discussing them. And as they come up, we will continue to do so. One of the recommendations was add a mental health question to the 911 script saying something like, hello, 911, is this a fire, health, police, or mental health emergency? So my response to this, I don't have enough room on a slide, so I'm just going to kind of, freelance here with the commission. We put our dispatchers through rigorous training. They go through a year's worth of training. One of the industry best practices is we do not start our calls with what kind of emergency or what's happening, because the most important piece of information that we need is where the emergency is. Because you can call and tell me, just give you an example, that you're having a heart attack, but if I don't know where you're having the heart attack at, I can't send you help. And a lot of the situations that we face, like domestic violence is a very good one. The caller may not have a whole lot of time to talk to us because his or her abuser may be in the room with them, or they may have just stepped out. So they have, 15 to 20 seconds where they can call 911. And sometimes the only thing they can give us is their address. So I'm certainly willing to look more about what options we can do to maybe add something like this in there. But when it comes down to it, the address has to be first all the time. Because without that, it does us no good to know what the emergency is if we don't know where it's going on. So we're certainly open to, the suggestions, but I'm just not sure how in this particular one we can implement it. Because once we get the address, the next question is, tell us exactly what happened. And at that point, that's where we're usually able to determine through our training, whether it's a police, fire, they need mental health resources or whatever the situation might be, we're usually able to determine it just based on our experience. So I'm sure the commission might have a few questions on that. Is there anything I can answer?
Well, I'm certainly delighted to see you add the mental health emergency question. Hospitals are already asking certain questions at the beginning of a call, and I think it's great that you would add that as well. So thank you.
And I think what I'm hearing, Steve, is you're ensuring that your dispatchers are properly trained to capture that mental health crises as a part of their diagnosis of what they're being told. And I think that was one of the intents of the commission, was not to specifically direct you how to do your job as a professional, but to ensure that that issue was actively being addressed. And what I'm hearing with that training that you're describing is that that is one of the things that the dispatchers are trained to identify. And so even though they may not ask that opening line, they are fishing for what the cause of this call might be and how to best direct resources to it. Is that, am I correctly understanding what you're saying?
Yes, Commissioner, you're 100% accurate on that. Another piece to add into that is, again, I said it earlier in the presentation, but mental health is one of my big things. And, not just for our callers and the citizens that we serve, but also my staff. This is a taxing job. They hear some of the worst calls that you don't want to hear them. They hear people in their most unimaginable situations. Our police officers and our firefighters, they have to go out and see these things in person. But when it comes down to it, when the firefighters are done with the call, they get to go back to a station and decompress with their brothers and sisters about what happened, and have chats and deal with it however they deal with those types of things, right? Our dispatchers, they hang up that call and guess what happens? Phone rings again. And here comes the next crisis. And so our dispatchers live in a life where they're literally, sometimes they're here 10 to 12 hours a day, surrounded by crisis and, issues. And, just to throw a fact out to the commission that a lot of people don't know, out of all the first responders, dispatch has the highest suicide rates of all the first responders. And it's because they don't get a lot of that closure. So mental health is huge. It's near and dear to my heart. One of the things that we are implementing later on this year is I am starting a requirement that all of our dispatchers are going to go through an 8-hour course every year. And it's a twofold course. The first 4 hours is on how to recognize signs of mental health emergencies in callers. The whole training is designed by a dispatch company that specializes in dispatch. And then the other 4 hours is how to take care of yourself. It's really hard for me as a director to ask for our people to take care of others when we need to take care of our people as well. We need to lead by example. And so that other part of that training is going to be that we give them the tools on how to deal with these things. So that will be starting. I'm hoping that we can get that started by the end of the summer. And then from there on out, I am making it a department requirement that our dispatchers attend a yearly, refresher course on that.
Did you say that dispatchers are working like 12 hours a day?
On a good day, Commissioner. Sometimes more.
Wow.
Yes, sir. Sometimes more. We, when I took over, just to give you a little example on recruiting, we had almost 30 openings the day I took over. I started November 1st, and we had, I think it was 27, 28 openings. We are down to 5 openings at this point. We have started recruiting, and like I said, I am not cutting corners because I don't want anybody in those seats, because not everybody is qualified to do the job, and not everybody has the skills needed to do this job. I want the right people. One of the first things I did was I went to Mayor Mendenhall and said, hey, look, I know I'm the new guy, but I need more money for my people. We were paying them $17 an hour to listen to calls like babies not breathing or hearing people commit suicide on the phone. And I don't know about you, but you cannot pay me $17 an hour to do that. So we went out, and the mayor was extremely supportive in getting us extra money to make sure that our people were appropriately compensated. So a lot of our dispatchers that have been here for a long time, they're making a wage now that they can live off of, that makes them feel good about the work that they do. As a director, when I look at asking people to care about their community and care about the people that are calling in, we have to make sure that we're showing them that we care about them as well in order to do that. And so every decision I make, I've instituted what's called the CEO philosophy, and it stands for our citizens or our callers, our employees, and our organization. And if we're going to make any change, we have to be able to articulate why we have a positive impact on all 3 of those, and in that order. Our callers and the people we serve are always first, the employee is always second, and the organization always third. And so I've instituted that, and kind of my employees get sick of me asking, well, how does this impact CEO? But it's something that I'm trying to make as part of the culture here, and we've done a really good job with it so far.
You may need some more funding, because you need some more people.
Yeah, I agree. We right now we are 5 down for our full-time equivalents, but we will definitely be asking for more positions as we get those filled. I felt it was appropriate that we need to fill the positions we already have before I start asking for more, because otherwise, what are you doing with them, right? They're just more empty positions. So once I can get the positions I have filled, we will start reaching out and trying to, see what we need, for our future growth and going forward.
Well, let the commission know what we can do to help.
I absolutely will.
Thank you.
All right, Mo, I think we can move on to the next one.
Actually, Steve, can I just acknowledge the importance of a couple of things you said there? So my background's in law enforcement, and the dispatchers are very important to me, and they have a very challenging job. And obviously, sometimes there's conflict between the dispatcher and the officers in the field, because the officers want all the information right now, and the dispatchers are working hard to get that, right?
Yep.
And because of that pressure, both from the field resources and from the community, you're doing the best you can to get information out of sometimes a hysterical person who is really struggling to communicate, which leaves a dispatcher in that kind of stuck position that, of course, they want the information too, and they're doing the best they can, which can create a feeling of, I don't want to say helplessness, because I don't want to disempower our dispatchers, but a frustration that there's only so much that you can do. And then, as you said, you just move on to the next one, right? So I always felt like as a field officer, I got to go out and see the closure, and I would try to be thoughtful to follow up back with the dispatcher. Not everyone does that, and you can't always do it. But it is an extremely stressful job. So I first want to acknowledge the work that they do. And secondly, thank you for being a part of what I think is an emerging trend around our country for first responders, including dispatchers, for that mental health support. Because it is a very hard job, and there's not a lot of people who can understand it. And our mental health professionals can be part of the solution, and making those connections is part of our responsibility as leaders, I feel. And I appreciate that you see that and that you're taking care of our dispatchers in that way, because it's critical. So
Thank you. Also, just so the commission knows, we also have a dispatch therapy dog that I would love for you to come meet. So if any of you ever want to come spend a little time in dispatch and see what we do, reach out to me. And her name is Flora, and she's been great for our people. She lives here in dispatch with us for most days. So she's been a great help. So, and then the last bullet point is just establishing a civilian force response team to handle certain calls for service related to low-level investigative crimes and low-level disputes. We are already collaborating with multiple partners to help launch call diversion programs. We already talked about MCAT, the park rangers. The fire department is trying to start their chat team, which from my understanding, they're going to be doing very soon. And then we have the regular meetings with Salt Lake City PD, Salt Lake City FD, and tons of other agency partners to ensure that our processes follow industry best practices and guidelines to serve our communities. We also dispatch for the city of Sandy, their police and fire departments, and we are having the same discussions with them as well on how we can help them with some of these issues. So these are programs that aren't just isolated to Salt Lake City, because we do have another partner, which is Sandy. And so in every opportunity that I get, I try to encourage them to also come on board with a lot of these items. And that is all I have for the commission. So I'm more than open to answer any other questions or comments.
Getting the other people to come on board, is that a problem other than with Sandy? Midvale, Cottonwood Heights, can we get them to work with you as well?
So they have a different dispatch center, which is the Valley Emergency Communication Center, which is over in West Jordan. I actually have regular meetings with their director as well, where I pitch a lot of the things that we're doing over here in Salt Lake City. I wouldn't say that those talks have been super productive, because they dispatch for, I think it's 18 different law enforcement agencies. So you have 18 competing interests. So getting 18 people at once on board is difficult. But I would encourage the commission to, maybe reach out to Director Ruff at VEC, or the Valley Emergency Communications Center, for some of those questions, because they definitely, these are things that need to be done valley-wide. But for us, with Sandy, we're able to directly impact our relationship with Sandy. And Sandy has been very receptive to a lot of them. They don't have the funding to do some of the call diversion programs, but there's other things that we've been helping them with, to make sure that our values are also displayed in the way we dispatch for them, not just for Salt Lake City.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate what you're doing with 911. And by the way, I'm on the board of the dispatch group, so I will be there to help you with whatever I can.
We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for that presentation. And on behalf of the commission, I want to tell you thank you for listening to our recommendations and incorporating it into your work product. That means a lot to us and helps validate the work that we're doing to make sure that it's being listened to and operationalized. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier in my presentation, we want to be a partner as much as you want us to be a partner. So have me back anytime.
Appreciate it. I can see several areas that you're working on that we'd love to be a part of. And
Absolutely.
and we'll report that to the full-time chair. Make sure that our relationship with you is strong.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Davis, this is supposed to be your meeting. I was just filling in, and now that you're back, would you like to take over? I'd be happy to hand off the baton.
Well, you can go ahead if you'd like and do the rest of the meeting, and I'll do it another time.
Okay, I could use the experience, so I appreciate it.
All right.
Moana, will you bring the agenda back up, please? And I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say that I was supposed to give a 10-minute presentation on the work that we're doing, but I just want to ask if we can push that to the next meeting. It's not really pertinent for this one, so that we can talk about the hybrid meeting schedule, which is the last agenda item. Just requesting that. I'll pull it up right now.
That's fine with me, and I think we'll defer to you about that content and its urgency. So I think you're the best judge of that. If that works for you, let's move on to that hybrid discussion.
Okay, so I just wanted to inquire, due to the pandemic restrictions being lifted in the last few weeks, the law is requiring us to have an anchor location where we would need to have personnel such as myself or the commission participate. I'll be meeting with Nicole and Tanya later on in the month, but I wanted to get a feel for what all of you folks want to do in terms of, would you like a quarterly in-person meeting, maintain virtual subcommittee meetings? Those were the two biggest things, as well as understanding that with the anchor location, any of you are able to come here to the city and county building if you would like to. But if we are doing virtual, we could also choose what the rules are for the commission.
Well, I think it's a good idea to have a meeting from time to time, quarterly perhaps, in person. I think that will give us an opportunity to know each other a little better, but also to work on some things that we have in common, as opposed to just committees making decisions. So I would certainly be in favor of a hybrid type of meeting. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Okay.
I agree with Pastor Davis 100% on that. And as far as subcommittee meetings, or an option for hybrid.
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Commissioner Johnson. You went in and out. What you said?
As far as committee, we could keep that virtual.
Okay. Keep subcommittee.
Did you hear me on that one?
Yeah, you were saying to keep subcommittee meetings virtual.
Yeah,
that's what I caught.
And the core committee, I mean, I'd like to meet in person.
Okay.
Moana, do I understand that we would still have monthly meetings as a full commission, but there would be a hybrid option to attend in person or virtually?
Yes.
And that quarterly we would just have an in-person with no option to attend virtually?
Yes, and that would be to the chair and vice chair's purview, but I wanted to also see what the rest of you wanted, because I know that they would ask So what the rest of the commission was thinking.
So I'm personally in favor of that. I would like to be together more often, and I feel like in this way we'll have the best of both worlds. And in terms of the subcommittee, I think I agree with Steve that virtual will work, unless there's a reason to meet in person, and then we could leave it to the discretion of the committee chairs, the subcommittee chairs.
Okay.
Would be my recommendation. So clarifying that, are there other thoughts from other commissioners on how to proceed?
The committee chairs and the chairs of the overall committee too.
Okay. And we'll have everyone's. And so I'm just telling you that's all that the law requires, is that this group just decide what they want to do. As long as I personally am here at the anchor location. So I will be letting you know there's gonna be we're gonna figure out how to do the hybrid in terms of recording and everyone listening in. But I will definitely be broadcasting here from the city and county building.
And we still have to put this to a vote. Is that correct?
I'm gonna draft up some, I will put it into, the policies and rules that we adopted at the beginning of or at the end of last year. This will be part of those policies so that you all will have to vote to adopt those rules.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll draft them up for you all, and then you can have, you can see what they are and give feedback as well. Okay,
Thank you.
Great.
thank you.
And how are we doing on time? Are we at 7 o'clock yet? Do we want
Yeah.
to have? So I think that training committee, our meeting was postponed. School safety chair is not here, and policy would Commissioner Davis or McDonald, would you care to comment on your subcommittee meetings, or is that something that can wait for next month?
And I apologize because Reverend Davis was ready for the meeting, but then I had the flu, so I'm so sorry.
Well, we're glad you're feeling better, and we understand.
Yeah.
The training committee did not have their
Yeah.
meeting, so we'll certainly postpone that for another time.
Okay, that was perfect.
So let's postpone all four of them for another time. Policy and practice, the training, and the school committee, and then the final review.
That works for me. Do we have a need for a tentative session? Are you aware of any, Moana?
No.
Okay, I think this was a great meeting, not just because I was the chair, but instead of that. Would anyone, is anyone opposed to us adjourning this meeting?
Well, I think Commissioner Steve, that it would be a good idea to say a special thanks to the 911 commissioner for his presentation. It fits nicely with him working with the police chief with some of our recommendations earlier. So I think we need to say thank you to them. Thank you.
I totally agree, and I'll tell you personally, I'm impressed.
Right.
Because sometimes there can be a rub between the different departments working with each other. I feel like there's a good feeling of camaraderie, understanding that the ultimate mission is to serve our community. And I think that comes through in their presentations. And I think it's worth acknowledging that. And I agree with you. Thank you to 911, and also thanks again to Chief Brown. He gave a very lengthy presentation as well. Well, lengthy. It was brief. It was appropriate length is what I mean to say.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that. Junior? Do we cover everything we need to?
Yep.
Okay. Katie, did you get a chance to introduce yourself?
Katie's, yes, she's taking our notes. She's our executive assistant to Coletta. So
Thank
I,
you. So were you able to work through all the rambling that I did for any cogent points? Okay. Perfect.
Yes, no worries. I just listen and lurk in the background and yeah, but it is really interesting to get to listen into these conversations. So I appreciate it. I always walk away with learning a lot. So
And thank you for supporting our commission. I agree with the Reverend. I think we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
thank you.
Take care.